Loved by some and maybe not so appreciated by others, the Kingdom Hearts series has undoubtedly earned itself a deserving spot as one of the most discussed video games when it comes to fashion. Developed in the early 2000s by Japanese game studio Square Enix in partnership with massive multinational American mass media conglomerate Walt Disney, Kingdom Hearts and its distinct fashion style is ironically rooted in rebellion, counterculture, and heralding the idea that kindness is punk rock before any other mainstream media. The first game in the series, Kingdom Hearts 1, was released on March 28th of 2000 after Disney reached out to Square with the proposition of collaborating on a game. Apparently, at that time, Square and Walt Disney Japan had offices in the same building. The director of the game, Tetsuya Nomura, shared in an interview with Famitsu that Shinji Hashimoto, director and executive producer at Square, just so happened to be in the same elevator with someone from Disney, and they apparently talked and shared the sentiment about how it would be nice to work on a project together sometime. This allegedly led to Hashimoto and Hironobu Sakaguchi, the beloved Final Fantasy director, writer, producer, and designer, coming to Disney with the idea of working on something together along with the support of Nomura, who had expressed that he had been dreaming on working on a project that felt something like if Mario 64 met Final Fantasy. At this point, all Nomura really needed was a really easily recognizable character like Mario to jumpstart his project the way that he imagined it. And as it happens, Disney offered the solution to his problem. This collaborative series between Disney and Square that we now know as Kingdom Hearts would go on to find unthinkable success with worldwide audiences of all ages, and it is still going strong 20 years later. The characters went through rigorous Disney guidelines and many developmental stages before arriving to the eccentric and whimsical characters that we all know and love today. So today we are going to sit down and take a look at most of the mainline Kingdom Hearts titles and discuss the characters' style evolutions and break down the fashion history of their designs throughout the years. If you've been on the channel before, you'll know that I love my costumes, but even I'll admit sometimes I don't feel like clanking around in my armor in the grocery store. But even when I'm dressed more casually, I still want to have fun and explore styles I think are super cool. I get contacted pretty often about what I'm wearing in my videos and my costumes, so I am excited to share that today's costumes are actually easily accessible and readily wearable pieces designed by today's sponsor, Sugoi Collections. Sugoi kindly sent me a couple of their pieces to try out, and right now I am wearing the Key of Destiny racing jacket, but they also sent me both versions of their Organization 13 zip-up. I'm really picky about the collaborations that I choose to do on my channel just because I only ever want to share high quality pieces and something that I really believe in on my channel. And I am really happy to share that I've been wearing these pieces a lot, especially the version 1 Organization 13 zip-up. I wear that one all the time. It is my new go-to sweater for when I'm just going out doing errands or walking my dogs. And I love that it's 100% cotton and it's heavy just in the right way. I feel like all of their pieces are designed with a lot of care and attention to their source inspiration and come in a really inclusive range of sizes to fit your body. And all of their pieces are basically unisex as well. Along with the sweaters, they also sent me some game-accurate detachable hardware accessories for the Organization 13 zip-ups. And if you stick around, I will be showing those off a little bit more later in the video. Sugoi Collections has a bunch of different designs inspired by a bunch of different series other than just Kingdom Hearts. So if you like what you see and decide to check them out, they ship worldwide no matter where you are in the world, and you can use my code clovergirle for 10% off your order. Okay, let's start with the analysis now. By the way, before we start, I just want to let you know that I am taking a look at all the designs on my side screen over here. I think that it is obvious we will be starting off with Sora, so the first design today is Sora from Kingdom Hearts 1. We can really easily identify that Sora's design emulates those of Donald, Goofy, and Mickey, and pulls a lot from common Disney style motifs in general. Tetsuya Nomura, the director and main designer for the game, has expressed that the main protagonist was actually initially supposed to be Mickey before he was able to convince Disney to let him design a brand new original character. And we can see so much of Mickey's design in Sora's fashion choices, like they both share the pair of comically enlarged yellow shoes and red shorts. Interestingly, Sora's shorts are actually attached to a full bodysuit that I'm assuming is a swimming wetsuit. This is a pretty cool feature and really reflects Sora's originality as his own character and his distinct beachy lifestyle. His shoes also appear quite tactical and active, with features like high ankle supports, buckles, and a very grippy outsole for security on rough terrain. The black and white in Sora's vest are pulled from Mickey's own black fur and white accessories. And I also feel like the general primary color palette that they chose for Sora was really interesting. Although the design itself is pretty intricate and has an undoubtedly punk streetwear aura about it, the use of a primary color palette of red, blue, and yellow really turns this design into something more elementary and kid-friendly. Children's toys are often colored in this primary color palette because not only does it naturally look good, but it is also easy to differentiate and interpret. The brightness of these colors also effectively conveys Sora's happy and positive personality to the players. I also want to mention that not only were Sora's shoes large to match Mickey, but also that large chunky shoes were really in during the time of the game's conception. Tetsuya Nomura is infamously loved and known for his wacky and very of-the-time character designs in the 2000s. He's discussed on many occasions about being inspired by movies and streetwear specifically. The silhouettes of Sora's outfit is reminiscent of streetwear, especially in Japan in the late 90s and early 2000s. His layering, belts, chains, zippers, and just generally visually stimulating clothing choices were hallmarks of many popular 2000s fashion subcultures. Even though his hair is not necessarily part of his fashion design and just his overall character design in general, I will say that his hairstyle reminds me heavily of gyaro, which is the male version of gyaru, and Visual Kei and Oni Kei substyles that were specifically popular in Japan during this time. When we see Sora next in Kingdom Hearts 2, his silhouette has generally stayed the same, but it is definitely a really big change in design. As the story gets undoubtedly a little bit more serious and the fan base grows a little bit older, so does Sora in response. I consider the design here a lot more tactical and detailed compared to Kingdom Hearts 1. The new inclusion of armored spalders on his shoulders is interesting and poses Sora more as a fighter and less of a naive beachy kid. While he does appear to still be wearing swim trunks, he now has his famous fisherman-esque chaps on top. I think that this pant style for Sora is probably his most iconic style piece and maybe the most iconic piece of fashion in the entire Kingdom Hearts series. I think it's such an interesting choice and an interesting design, and it's really something that really stands out to viewers for one reason or another, and I think it's really cool. I don't think it deserves any hate. I think it's just fun. So we still have that primary color palette going on from the first game, but instead of red being the main color, black is now the dominant color in this design, which is obviously a lot more serious. Not only do I see black as a more serious color, but also just the growth of Sora and the change in his circumstances throughout the story of the game. It's important to mention that vertical lines and color blocking is a really big part of Sora's visual design language. Before moving on, I just want to say, like, why are y'all such haters? Everyone loves to complain about Nomura's overuse of zippers and belts and straps, but like, honestly, I don't think it's that bad when you actually take a look at the designs. Maybe some other characters have a little bit more egregious use of zippers, but honestly, Sora is pretty practical in my eyes. I see a lot of people complaining about how the straps and belts and buckles and pouches are really impractical and stupid. The straps and belts on his pants just remind me of climbing gear and harnesses and share a similar purpose to punk suspender accessories. So I'm not really seeing this accessorizing overuse that everybody complains about, at least personally. Of course, this is my own taste, but I don't really see what the big deal is. I just felt like that was important to address before moving on. And then we have Sora's different drive forms, which are just different color variants of his main outfit, so nothing really changes. Basically, just the different colors represent his different forms. The Valor form, which is associated with red, is his physical fighting form, and red is typically associated with aggression and passion. Then we have his wisdom form, which is a more magic-based form, and it uses purple and blue, which is a color often used to represent leaders and wisdom. Yellow, which is usually quite a neutral and happy color, is used to depict his master form, which is a mix of physical and magic attacks. Then, of course, Anti-Sora is just pure black darkness. Then his limit form is just Kingdom Hearts 1 Sora, and his ultimate form represents everything good, which makes sense why it is an entirely white outfit with some black accents that are representing the duality of good and evil. I feel like this wouldn't be a complete and comprehensive analysis if I didn't at least mention the distinct culture surrounding fashion in Japan at the time that was definitely influencing not only the design choices of Kingdom Hearts and Tetsuya Nomura, but also many of the games that we know and love from this era. Notably among the documented fashion of this time was Fruits magazine, which was a Japanese fashion streetwear magazine that ran from 1997 to 2017 that has gained long-standing acclaim among both Japanese and international viewers even today. Fruits was founded by photographer Shoichi Aoki to document and share the fun and eccentric street fashion you could see on the streets of Harajuku, Japan. Taking a look at some of the outfits featured in this magazine, we can definitely see a ton of visual elements that were also heavily explored in the designs of Kingdom Hearts. There's a lot of interesting layering, impractical pieces, and fun silhouettes with bright colors being explored. Streetwear is an umbrella term, but some of the more notable styles found in the magazine are Garu, Decora, and punk subcultures. If we just quickly focus in on just the hairstyles of the characters, I'd like to take a look at the Gyaro subculture called Onike. Compared to the more casual and fun looks of the Gyaru male counterparts Gyaru, the Onike, or Big Brother style subculture, was a more mature, tailored, and sharp rendition of this style. I swear, if you open up any shoujo manga from this era, you will definitely see a bunch of male characters with this distinctive Onike style. Sora, and as we'll later see, Roxas, are definitely a product of this huge hairstyle trend. The only non-numbered title we're going to be talking about is Dream Drop Distance, just because it is the most canon side game. So now we're going to be taking a look at Sora's Dream Drop Distance design. So the design in Dream Drop is very similar to Sora's Kingdom Hearts 1 design. It's thematically similar with just a couple design tweaks, like more color blocking and the inclusion of black elements like we saw in Kingdom Hearts 2. This design is a very balanced mix of elements from both his Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 designs. Basically, it's his clothing from Kingdom Hearts 1, except with the addition of more vertical lines from his Kingdom Hearts 2 design and the addition of the X-crossed lines on his torso. The final design we're going to be discussing today for Sora is his Kingdom Hearts 3 design. Releasing in 2019 with more than 10 years apart from the last mainline game, Sora and all of the other characters definitely aged along with the fan base in this game. In Kingdom Hearts 3, Sora's design saw somewhat of a simplification. This design is really characteristic of the late 2010s. Popular fashion went through a lot of changes in the last 10 to 20 years, and this is definitely reflected in the more mature and refined clothing choices. Sleek layering and functional tech wear was very popular in Japan at this time, and in general, a more muted and desaturated color palette was also being embraced. We can see Sora embodying this cultural shift with his more muted and less creatively exaggerated clothing choices. The red in his design has been desaturated by a couple notches, and the blue has been completely removed and replaced by a dark gray, and there is a lot more black than any of his previous designs. I quite like the buttons on his vest hoodie, which is a new design feature among all of the characters in Kingdom Hearts 3 that replaces a majority of the belts and straps and zippers. And lastly, his shoes now look less like sneakers or water shoes and more like tactical boots and have shrunk considerably to a more normal proportion. The next character we're going to be discussing is Riku, starting off with Kingdom Hearts 1. In Kingdom Hearts 1, Riku functions both as a best friend and a rival. Sora and Riku both wear yellow, blue, and white, but a big part of Sora's design language is red, and that is a big color missing from Riku's clothing choices. To me, this represents how Riku is maybe missing something that Sora has and creates many problems for his character. This can show how they're very similar but also very different, which solidifies them as friends but also rivals. Riku's tight yellow shirt is somewhat akin to a swimming rash guard, and he has these crossing black straps that attach with buttons at his abdomen, which could maybe represent the closed-off portions of his personality. And then if we move down, he also appears to perhaps be wearing swim trunks of some kind of like Sora, with an outer pant attached with straps on his belt that resemble fishing waders. In general, in this first game, the beachy tropical style is really strong with the main crew. Like if we take a look at his ankles, he has these straps around them that we can assume would stop water from going up his pants. Then in Kingdom Hearts 2, Riku is a lot more sloppy and disheveled than we are used to seeing him. How I see this design is that his black inner vest is representing perhaps his repressed darkness, while his yellow and white outer vest represents parts of his past that he is trying to get back in touch with. Even though this design is quite simple, I appreciate the use of layering and the balance between slim-fitting top pieces and baggy trousers that balance the look. This outfit definitely has very large grunge undertones and influences. The baggy jeans, casual sneakers, studded black belts, arm warmers are all things that we can see out of any 90s, 2000s emo music video. All of these clothing options were seen as against the norm of the time and carry a rebellious spirit, which is something that definitely aligns with Riku as a character at this point. Taking a look at Riku in Dream Drop Distance, we can agree that this design is very similar to his Kingdom Hearts 2 design. It's generally just a more cleaned up version of it. His inner and outer vest have just been combined into one clothing piece now, with black collar and hems and yellow and white details. His jeans are more denim-like and a bit less slouchy, and his boots remind me of Doc Martens with the yellow welt around the outer sole, and now also directly match the color scheme of his vest. I want to mention that I quite like how the laces are wrapped around the ankles of the boot. It just appears more tactical and active, which fits in with a combat game. He has also regained his black wrist cuffs from Kingdom Hearts 1, but not the matching gloves. And then we're gonna take everything we know about Riku and just throw it away, because in Kingdom Hearts 3, we have a design that is a huge departure from anything else that we've seen on him. A major design element here is the inclusion of white and black plaid. This interlocking of white and black to create gray in the pattern represents the battle between light and dark happening in the series. So the pattern we know as plaid is actually a deviation from the original tartan pattern. Originating in Scotland, tartan was both a distinctive pattern made from naturally available colors and resources that identified different clans from one another, but also later used as a word that would represent both the identity and heritage of the Scots. The word plaid used today is a British and American recreation of different variants of tartan. An article featured in Handwoven magazine by Christina Garton discusses the differences between tartan and plaid. Many of you more experienced weavers may already know this, but all tartans are plaid. However, not all plaids are tartan. Both plaids and tartans are woven of stripes that meet at 90-degree angles. Tartans have an identical pattern of stripes running vertically and horizontally, resulting in overlapping square grids. Regular plaids are not necessarily the same in both directions, with variation in color, size, and/or patterns of stripes. In addition, tartan is almost always woven into 2/2 twill pattern, which forms the illusion of new colors blended from the original ones. The word plaid derives from the Gaelic word plaid, which means blanket or mantle, and the word is used there to describe a kind of kilt that is thrown over the body, and not the actual pattern on the fabric. To explore why plaid became such a staple in alternative fashion, and more specifically why I believe it's so heavily featured on the Kingdom Hearts designs, I think we first need to look at the history of Scotland itself. Throughout the centuries, Scotland has been continuously fighting for its independence against those who wish to strip them of their identity. In 1746, the English passed the Act of Proscription, which banned the wear of tartan altogether until several years later in 1782, where it was overturned, with the sole purpose of stripping the Scots of their history and cultural identity. Queen Victoria aided the movement by decorating her house in a distinct tartan dubbed Royal Stuart tartan, and it is probably the most recognizable plaid pattern of all time and became widely adopted by preppy styles and society's elite. If we jump now to the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, we are now seeing the punk and alternative movements beginning their appropriation of tartan. Spearheaded by fashion designers like Vivienne Westwood, who deconstructed these plaid patterns in unorthodox pieces, notably her 1996 Storm in a Teacup collection, counterculture movements made tartan their own and used the elite's own pattern against them. And in a way, we can kind of look at this as reclaiming the originally rebellious spirits of the Scots and their fight for freedom and independence from their own respective circumstances. In the 90s, plaid had a more widespread resurgence, especially in America, where trends are more typically influenced by celebrity culture, when grunge and hip-hop musicians began embracing the rebellious spirits of tartan as well. Now, back to Riku and Kingdom Hearts finally. I think it's safe to say that our protagonists are the perfect candidates to be donned in tartan throughout their fight against the evil in their worlds. It is also notable in the 2010s, plaid was experiencing a resurgence with the popularity of hipster and punk culture at the time. The 2013 Met Gala theme was plaid, chaos to couture, and showcased the plaid of the decade. Since Kingdom Hearts 3 released in 2019, I think it is more than fair to say that the cultural resurgence of plaid at the time contributed to the designs we see in this game. And then the final character in our main crew is, of course, Kairi. Now, compared to Sora, in Kingdom Hearts 1, I would say that Kairi has a lot more in common stylistically with Riku instead. She shares a very similar white, yellow, and black color palette, except with purple instead of blue, and also has a complete absence of red. Just like the other Kingdom Hearts 1 designs, Kairi's outfit is based around a beachy, water-based atmosphere, and the highlight of this design is really her awesome water shoes. This design is so 2000s fruitager arrow futuristic idealism at its prime. The little adjustable pull ties around the ankle is my favorite part of the shoes. They look so good. I think that they are incredibly well-designed shoes. In general, Kairi's cute vacation wear is definitely taking cues from the 2000s McBling fashion aesthetic. While Kairi is not noticeably blinged out as style icons like Paris Hilton or Lindsay Lohan are, she is dressed in maximalist feminine layers that are very reminiscent of the celebrities at this time. Then in Kingdom Hearts 2, Kairi shows up looking very different than in Kingdom Hearts 1. This specific design for Kairi feels very inspired by some Alexander McQueen designs where he uses zippers as vertical design elements in really interesting ways. While she maintains her white undershirt, which represents her purity at her core, her dress feels a lot less beachy and less casual and a lot more mature. After Kairi gains a weapon herself and grows more stronger, she also gets a more tactical design that aligns more with the other characters in the game. The introduction of some zippers and harnesses to Kairi's design makes it feel a lot more in the same design language as the rest of the cast. She is definitely stepping away from the more McBling casual aesthetic in the first game to something more punk chic. And then at the bottom of the design, she has these Converse-like sneakers with laces around her ankles. And I feel like this is a really great change of pace and ties in really well with the experimental design choices they made with her dress. And then lastly, in Kingdom Hearts 3, we see this interesting asymmetry in the design that is quite uncommon in the series' design choices. In general, they have always made more tame design choices when it comes to Kairi, so her dress here is still very simple and they don't really break away from this choice they made all the way in the first game. She has still kept her white undershirt, obviously symbolizing that she has kept her purity and light throughout everything that's happened in the game. I also want to point out that both Sora and Riku have zippered vest jackets, but that was something that Kairi never had. So here they kind of gave her a zippered vest sweater, and I think it ties her in a little bit more with the other two characters in her crew. And then the inclusion of buttons on her dress helps it feel just a little bit more balanced through the asymmetrical patterns on the skirt frills. At this point, Kairi is now balancing being both a Princess of Heart and Guardian of Light, which can be represented by the dual patterns on her dress. And lastly, they swapped out her sneakers for a pair of chunky combat boots, and I feel like they balance the outfit really well. The first licensed Disney character that we're going to be talking about is Goofy. This design does not stray too far away from Goofy's traditional depiction in Disney media. His vest, his long sleeve green top, his long pants, and large shoes are all altered to be in a more tactical street style than his traditional design though. This more saturated and colorful composition evokes images of Japanese Harajuku styles. And then the texture that they were able to achieve with Goofy's clothing is probably the most interesting thing here. The quilted fabric of his shoes with the metal plated toes is so cool. And I also quite like the buttoned cuff straps on his pant legs and shirt sleeves. I feel like it really ties the design together very well and makes it a lot more tactical and combat oriented. Although not as tropical, I do recognize a kind of outdoorsy fisherman vibe in this design. His slouchy cargo pants and the gray vest with all the pouches and zippers are very reminiscent of casual outdoor wear that you'd see in the 2000s. Goofy is really embodying his inner middle America Great Lake vacation dad vibe here. Moving on to Donald Duck now, the first thing that we can all immediately see and agree on is that blue is a huge element in his mage design. So blue has historically been used to depict wisdom and divinity throughout the centuries. Blue is, of course, the color that we see when viewing the vastness of the ocean or peering up at the endless sky, and it is often associated with godliness and religious contexts in Judaism and Christianity. In the far past, blue was a primary color used in priest garments, and many depictions of the Virgin Mary clothe her in blue garments. If you've played any of the Kingdom Hearts games, you would know that Donald is an incredibly powerful magic wielder and one of the most powerful mages in the larger Square Enix universe. And his almost entirely monochromatic blue garb definitely sets him apart and expresses his magical prowess. I also quite appreciate the zippers and pouches on his design. I feel like they add so much visual interest and fun to the design. It just wouldn't be the same without it. I think that this is one of the designs where people complain about Nomura's overuse of zippers, especially like on Donald's hat, but I just see it as another visual interest element. And I don't really see a problem with it. I think it looks really cool. Like if I were to think of his hat without the spiral zipper on it, it just wouldn't have the same effect. So I gotta say, I think all you haters just need to hop off your high horse and learn to have some fun once in a while. So Mickey, or known in Kingdom Hearts as King Mickey, was originally supposed to be the protagonist of the Kingdom Hearts games before he was replaced by Sora. Mickey's design in Kingdom Hearts 1 is essentially a one-to-one outfit match with Sora. It ties the two together thematically very well, while still also being recognizable for Mickey as his own original Disney character. His characteristic large yellow shoes and red shorts are still there, and if you were to take a look at him, you would know that it's Disney's Mickey right off the bat with his classic color combinations. In Kingdom Hearts 2, Mickey is primarily depicted in an Organization 13 cloak, which we will be discussing extensively later in the video, so stick around. We will now be continuing to Kingdom Hearts 3 with Mickey's most recent design. In this most recent title, Mickey's design is very similar to Riku's Kingdom Hearts 3 design. This is a representation of how Riku and Mickey have now become very good friends and connects them together. In Kingdom Hearts 1, Mickey had a matching outfit with Sora and was very close to him, and now in Kingdom Hearts 3, he has a matching outfit with Riku. He, of course, keeps his classic yellow shoes and generally stays true to his Disney original Mickey with his always recognizable yellow shoes and red shorts. This is definitely my opinion, but I feel like this is one of the sleekest designs in the entire game. It is just a really great outfit. It looks really great. It shares the same black and white plaid with the rest of the main crew and continues to play off of this light versus dark theme. I find it a bit humorous and ironic that the most wearable and one of the most stylish outfits in the game is like literally on Mickey Mouse. Like, what? I don't really have much to say about Namine, but I still wanted to include her in the video. All I can say is that this is a pretty simple and clean outfit. Get it? But I feel like the overwhelmingly white and simple nature of her design is obviously representing her purity, light, and the good in the world, but also has a subtle beachy undertone. Her blue sandals have these little tropical flower details, and the hem of her dress also slightly resembles floral petals. So yeah, I don't have much to say about her just because it is such a simple design, but she definitely deserves to be included in the video. The next character we're going to be discussing is, in my opinion, the best female design in the game, Aqua. The black corset that Aqua is wearing gives her otherwise very flowy design some structure and solidity, while the draping blue fabric provides a feminine edge. And then, as we discussed extensively with Donald, blue is often associated with wisdom, clarity, leaders, and mages. Aqua is also Latin for water, which would account for the large amount of blue in her design. And I think that she can also be seen as a sort of divine feminine energy in Kingdom Hearts. The 90s and early 2000s had a sort of special affinity for medieval times. We saw the release of so many films like Hook, Robin Hood, A Knight's Tale, and Ella Enchanted, among many. I see a lot of medieval revival cues in Aqua's design compared to the more Japanese-inspired designs of some of the other characters, with her corset and flowing bustle-like skirt and her silky flowing mid-arm sleeves. These are all design choices we see in many of these medieval movies from this time as well, just with a little bit more of a tactical and warrior-like flair. And then she is wearing these armored metal shoes, which are quite dainty in shape, but match very well with her metal arm pieces and provide a little bit more of a warrior edge to her design. And of course, along with the rest of her crew, she has these X-shaped sashes on her chest. As we saw on Aqua and we'll later see on Ventus, Terra also has these X-shaped straps on his chest. More so than the other two, Terra's straps more resemble cross suspender straps, which I find to be a really interesting alternative styled accessory. Terra, Latin for earth or land, has a mostly neutral and earthy color palette, which makes sense in relation to his name. His brown flowy pants resemble a feudal style of Japanese pants called hakama, and his belt resembles a thin obi sash. These pair of hakama in particular would be labeled as uminori hakama or horse riding hakama, since they have a division between the legs to make two separate openings, as compared to the more formal and traditional undivided hakama. This style of pants was popular among samurai in the feudal era because they were not only a staple in Japanese fashion, but very versatile for a lot of movement. While having a lot of historical context in his design, Terra is turned a little bit more contemporary with a kind of tuxedo waistcoat kind of fabric attached to the top of his hakama, which I think is really interesting and catches my eye immediately when I look at his fashion choices. And then paired with this is a slim, tight-fitting black tank top, which kind of reminds me a little bit of Riku's black tank top, and some golden metal armor on his arm. And just like Aqua, he has a pair of metalled armored shoes that match his other armor pieces. Taking a look at Ventus now, he also has a X strap on his chest like his other two friends. Displayed in Ventus's dual-colored crop vest, there is a dichotomy of light and dark being displayed. Underneath his top vest, he's actually wearing another vest that more closely resembles a waistcoat in a lighter gray color, which is of course the mixed color of white and black. I want to point out that Ventus also has both golden and silver armor pieces, which combines the silver of Aqua's armor and the gold of Terra's armor. Then on his wrist is a checkerboard cuff that matches Roxas's jacket. The general shape and silhouette of Ventus's outfit resembles that of Sora's, while the construction and color of the pieces actually more closely resemble Roxas. It's pretty easy to miss, but on the inside of his vest collar and some stripes on his boots, Ventus also has a little bit of a peak of red, which of course ties him in a little bit more with Roxas and Sora. This strikes a really good balance of influences from both of these characters, and because of this, I want to save some more of my thoughts for when we talk about Roxas more in depth. But before we do that, I quickly want to go over Vanitas. I purposely shied away from discussing any armored pieces today since they're pretty difficult to assess on a fashion basis. But Vanitas is an interesting case, so I decided to include him in the video. Although appearing quite fleshy and muscly looking, he does actually have some draping and fabric effects in his fashion.
His boots in particular are quite reminiscent of fabric-based rib-knit boots, similar to the style of the Veneta boot I found by Amina Muaddi. There is an interesting mix of the darkness from Ventus and the incorporations of red and subtle blue colors from Sora's design. In general, this bodysuit design reminds me heavily of depictions of Marvel's Venoms and several artworks as well.
I thought that this was a perfect time to have a little bit of an outfit change because we are going to embrace the darkness a little bit more and shift over to talk about the Organization 13 members now. The first character that we're going to be discussing is Roxas. The most important element of the design that they created for Roxas is really highlighting the struggle with identity that he is going through. Obviously, in Kingdom Hearts, there is an ongoing battle between the forces of light and darkness, and Roxas's design is mostly composed of black and white with a little bit of gray areas here and there. There are also pops of red on his shoes and on the collar of his vest, which is an interesting tie-in with Sora and Mickey. The pants that Roxas are wearing are called double-fronted pants, and they basically have reinforced paneling from the knee down. And this, of course, serves a utility purpose, but it also ties into grunge fashion subculture. It has that slouchy skater style design, and in general, Roxas has a large emo alternative street skater style going on. Not only does the black and white checkerboard on his vest and his wrist cuff represent the conflict with light and darkness happening inside of him, but it is also undoubtedly a big emo and skater adjacent design choice. This makes a lot of sense for Roxas as a character, at least in my opinion, because he is shown to be a pretty complex character and going through a lot of different emotions throughout the game. Like I mentioned a little bit before, I think the main influence and focus in Roxas's design is really that alternative skater emo kind of vibe. I want to quickly mention his inner vest for a second, which is black with gray hems, and the inside of the collar, the inside of the vest, is actually also shown to be gray, which is interesting because gray is the mixture of light and darkness, white and black. So it's interesting that there are some morally gray areas included in Roxas's character design. I think we can all agree that Roxas just has like this inherent swag, like he looks a lot cooler than Sora. Sora looks a little bit more kiddish and naive and like a Disney character, while Roxas definitely looks a lot more like the Final Fantasy edgy skater side of Kingdom Hearts. Roxas is, of course, also shown in the Black Organization 13 cloak, but I am going to be talking about it a little bit more specifically later on, so we are just gonna skip over that for now. Next up is Xion. Xion is generally a quiet and reserved character, and this is directly reflected in her more conservative outfit. While she is, by many standards, wearing a short dress, by comparison to other female characters, is a little bit more covered up. Her top half of her body doesn't have anything exposed, there's no zippers, and she has a mock neck on the dress. This design is really quite contemporary, and I feel like that is reflected in the monochromatic scheme and just general simplicity. In the late 2010s, maximalism was out and minimalism and simplicity was in, and this kind of less is more design is embraced for Xion's casual clothing here. And this, of course, also ties in with her more reserved and gentle personality. I find it interesting that her dress is completely black, which can reflect many things about her character, but the bottom frills of the dress are actually in this stark white. This design choice can show how there might be something a little bit more going on inside of Xion than she initially believes. And the last member of our little Organization 13 trio is Axel/Lee. Axel is wearing this black and white grid patterned long tunic top, and it is such a mid-2010s style. I remember going into stores like Uniqlo in like 2016, 2017, and just seeing so many pants with this grid style on them. Axel's design resembles the fashion choices of rock stars and alternative celebrities of this time as well. This design is definitely a bit of an acquired taste because at first I didn't really bat an eye, but after examining it a little bit more closely for this video, I was like, huh, this kind of sucks, like I don't know. So I don't believe that this specific style has a specific name, and if it does, I am just unaware of it, but I like to call this Neo Visual Kei. I mention Visual Kei on the channel quite often because it is such a big inspiration for a lot of Japanese fantasy games, so of course I will go over it again in this video. Visual Kei, or visual style, is a sort of Japanese musical genre that started gaining traction in the 1980s. It's mostly defined by its whimsical, gothic, and shocking fashion choices accompanied by a typically hard rock or metal sound, but it can also be more poppy, punk, or classical in some cases. While technically used to define a musical movement, it's really difficult to say exactly what VK is. I have said before that I think it's best to think of it as an expressive movement with its own visual and audio identity. Popular early bands are like X Japan, Bucktick, and Dead End, and they were heavily inspired by the gothic and glam rock styles that were pretty established by American bands like Motley Crue, Kiss, and Poison. Visual Kei saw a lot of success in the 90s and early 2000s, and more popular bands popped up like the Gazette, Malice Miser, and Duran Gray. This era of Visual Kei really embraced and leaned into the European Gothic, Victorian, and Rococo styles combined with the earlier glam rock aesthetics. In the late 2000s and early 2010s, the genre started to see some gradual changes and evolved into what I refer to as Neo Visual Kei. After being active for many years, a lot of the popular groups actually ditched the extravagant makeup and clothing, costumes, and hairstyles for something a little bit more subdued, but still undoubtedly like punk, edgy, gothic. Visual Kei is really a uniquely Japanese perspective on all of the rock punk culture and their own cultural experience with it, and this is definitely where Axel's casual wear outfit derived from. And this is not even to mention his hairstyle, which is also incredibly reminiscent of early Visual Kei bands and their colorful and heavily styled whimsical hairdos. So to take one last look at Axel's design, if we look at his slouchy black vest, long tunic top, tight maroon cheetah print jeans, and tall heeled black boots, I feel like this is right out of a band poster from this time. While this design creates a really counterculture punk style for Axel, it also at the same time runs a little bit of a risk for being easily misunderstood or not as appreciated by those who are not as privy to the Japanese alternative culture at this time. Now I am going to focus in on the Organization 13 cloak itself and talk about some of our more villainous characters. I am actually going to group together Sykes, Luxord, Marluxia, Larcene, and Xigbar all together, just because they are all wearing the Organization 13 cloak, and the only thing that really differentiates them is their hair color and style and their weapon. So Star Wars has often been cited as a huge inspiration for Kingdom Hearts director and character designer Tetsuya Nomura, and we can absolutely see that in the designs of the Organization 13 cloaks. The long and sleek black mantle-style jackets are quite reminiscent of black Sith cloaks. The silhouette of flared sleeves and wide hoods are seen in both of these designs. Compared to the average cloak or the Sith cloaks, the waistline on the Organization 13 jackets are a lot more emphasized, which I think is a great touch that adds an element of edginess and that more sexy Matrix cool vibe to the design. This definitely also modernizes the jackets a lot more and feels right in line with the otherwise very 2000s characters in this game. We are now going to continue on to Ansem, who also wears the Organization 13 cloak but also has his own alternate outfit. Right off the bat, we're just going to identify that right on the top of his jacket, he has a little heartless badge. Right off the bat, I have to say that this is one of my favorite designs in the entire series. Like, it's just so dang cool, I don't know.
Kingdom Hearts is often referred to as a marrying between Disney and Final Fantasy into one game, to which the game director Tetsuya Nomura has shown a little bit of disdain towards and argues that Kingdom Hearts is entirely its own thing. But because there are also Final Fantasy characters featured in these games, I think we can definitely say that it is safe to agree that there is a lot of Final Fantasy design influences happening here, alongside the original ideas and Disney influences. I recognize a bit of a Sephiroth vibe going on here with the long silver hair, tall collar, and long open coat. There is definitely a bit of Final Fantasy flavor in this one. Many of the Kingdom Hearts designs have a black and white base, and Ansem also does this very successfully. On his waist is a white waistcoat, literally a waistcoat, because he has unbuttoned it to show his chest and abdomen with black straps and buttons. This is easily my favorite part of the outfit. I think that this lets you know everything you need to know about him when you first look at him. But a close contender for another favorite element would be his shoulder pauldron armor and the really cool way that they attach with buckles to his jacket. This is another kind of Final Fantasy VII Sephiroth adjacent design choice. We know that Tetsuya Nomura worked extensively on Final Fantasy VII, and I see this kind of industrial dictator, Shinra employee, Rufus Shinra kind of influence in Ansem's design as well. Following up Ansem, we are now obviously going to be discussing Xemnas. There is not too much to say about Xemnas. He is shown in the Organization 13 cloak, and then his own alternate version of the cloak as well. Xemnas's alternate cloak has a very flamboyant aura about it with its almost zebra stripe inspired design. The design on his cloak is a large printed nobody symbol and is a very visually unique and interesting way to show the juxtaposition and battle between dark and light. I feel like we don't often see such stark designs like this one, so I appreciate what they're trying to do with this. The very last character that we're going to be discussing today is none other than our ultra evil bad guy, XIII. Young XIII is shown in the Organization 13 cloak, but old XIII has his own design. Ansem and XIII are wearing the same outfit, just in slightly different ways. XIII's version of it is all covered up, while Ansem has everything all wide open, all his buttons open, showing off his body. When we see this design on XIII compared to Ansem, we can identify that it is very militant, and I do believe that it is the most conservative and mature style design in the entire series. I like to call this one dictator chic. It's a little bit difficult to pick out what exactly is the focal point in this design, but I do want to mention his white gloves, which pull up imagery of Mickey Mouse to me with his characteristic white gloves. I thought that it was interesting that they chose such a stark, bright color for his gloves, while his inner jacket is a little bit more of a ivory creamy white, while his gloves are very stark and more silvery. And I couldn't figure out why they made this decision, but I came to the conclusion that it reminds me a lot of Mickey Mouse and his design identity. So that's the connection that I made. I also want to focus in on his long black trench coat. So the trench coat has quite a long history, but we can really say it became popularized in World War I, where, as the name suggests, it protected soldiers in the trenches. It's really debated who really designed and popularized the modern trench that we know, but the two most accepted would be between menswear designers John Emery or Thomas Burberry, while the latter of these two has been treated a little bit more kindly by history, and we now know them as the brand Burberry. While the way that Ansem wore this outfit shows us everything we need to know about him, I believe the same is also true for XIII. The covered up and conservative way that XIII wears this outfit really evokes imagery of military, soldiers, dictators, and everything in that general strain.
I hope you enjoyed today's analysis. I feel like there is so much to unpack when it comes to video game designs, not only in what it says about the characters themselves, but also in the time period that the game was developed in. Video games can really be treated as their own little time capsules and tell us what exactly was going on in culture and fashion at the time that influenced the developers. Let me know in the comments which designs are your favorite, or maybe even which ones are your least favorite and why you think that. It is always my ultimate goal when making these videos to share knowledge and information, so I hope that you maybe learned something new in this video that you didn't know about previously. As always, thank you for watching. Bye!